All right, we're back. Graveyard Shift Movie Podcast, episode number 140. And this week, it might end up being the shortest episode we ever do here. I watched Gretel and Hansel from 2020. Gretel, played by, I don't know her real name. Hold on, let me look it up. But she played Beverly in the It movies from what was it, 2017? Those came out. Um, Sophia Lilies or Lillis, that's how her name is. But yeah, she basically it's her for 100% of the movie. Basically, like it's hardly ever not her on screen. But Gretel and Hansel from 2020. It's not great. I'm sure some people really like it. But there was a lot of I just zoned out, and it just became uninteresting to me at a point. I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm not gonna be too harsh on it. Because like I said, I think there is a very big portion of people who would like this one. But it just went. It just wasn't interesting to me. There was stuff I like in it. I think the lady was really good. The Gretel, even though I just told you her name, I can't remember her name. But I think she was really good in this movie. The music in this movie is amazing. It's really good. Yeah, a lot of the I like the whole aspect ratio. Is it 16:9 is the aspect ratio where it's the black bars on the side and stuff. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. But yeah, all of the story, I just didn't. I just lost interest in it. I couldn't keep up with it. So I'm gonna give it a 4. But yeah, there you go. And the reason I say it might end up being the shortest thing is because it feels like there's not a lot of plot points to write down. Like it just sort of kept going, and every now and then there will be something that happens that you have to write down. But for the most part, it just seemed like nothing was really happening that was worth writing down. Yeah, it's a short movie. It's an hour 27. It breezes by. I'll give it that. It doesn't feel like it was too slow. You know what I mean? Like, hour 27 went by pretty fast. So, that's a plus. If a movie feels like it's over fast, that's always a good thing for you. But hey, spoiler warning for Gretel and Hansel. I'm going to ruin everything about it. So you've been warned. The movie starts off with a woman telling a bedtime story. Telling all the boys and the girls to gather around. And she tells the story about the beautiful girl born in the pink hat. And this girl was born in this village, and everyone in the village loved her and talked about how beautiful she was and stuff. But a sickness overcame her, and she was going to die. They were talking about her first winter would be her last winter. But her dad knew of an enchantress who lived up in the woods, who had this dark power. And he took her up there, and he let the lady cure her of the sickness. But in curing her of the sickness, it also gave her a gift of second sight, where she could tell people's future. And we see later on she develops like this telekinesis type power as well. But people start not liking her because she tells them their future, and their future isn't good, so they start resenting her. And the way we see that she has this telekinesis thing is she walks up to this horse and just like kills it with her mind and shit. Like, it's really wild. And so yeah, people in the village start to ostracize her from them. And eventually her dad, even though he sacrificed all this stuff for her, he can't take it anymore. And we see him kill himself by sticking like this molten fucking hot rod that he just pulled out of the fire down his throat, and kills himself. So then she ends up being way too powerful. And after the dad kills himself, they're like, all right, that's enough of that. And they just go and they dump her off in the woods. And they make her stay out there all by herself. And then the lady says that the moral of the story is that beware those who offer you gifts because they always take something in return. Then we're introduced to Gretel and Hansel. They live in this village where they're starving. They don't have a lot of food. So Gretel is going to try to get a job as a kitchen maid, or she's going to help cook and clean. And when she goes into this place, we realize pretty soon that it's a brothel. We can hear women moaning, like through the walls and stuff. And we also realize that this guy isn't interested in having a cook maid, because he starts asking her, has she been able to keep her maidenhood and stuff? And he's just interested in another woman for his brothel. So Gretel's like, fuck this, and she just leaves. She goes back home, and she's having dinner with her mom. We had learned earlier when she was talking to the brothel owner that her dad has passed away and her mom can't do much on her own, so they haven't been able to get much food. And she's having like this stew with her mom, and the mom tells her that she's kicking her and Hansel out. She's like, I have no room for you guys here. There's too many ghosts filling up this place, She tells Gretel to go to the sisterhood of something and something and fall to their feet and beg for acceptance. But Gretel is like, well, they won't ever take Hansel. I can't leave him behind. And so the mom says, all right, well, then you two better just start digging your own graves. And then when it seems like Gretel isn't taking her seriously, the mom leaves and comes back a little bit later with an axe and just shoves it into she just comes down and sticks the axe in the dinner table and tells them that if she doesn't leave, she'll cut her into little bitty pieces. And so, yeah, they leave. They have no choice. They're kicked out of their house. They go walking. They're hungry. They're looking for shelter. And eventually they find this random house that Gretel says an old woman used to live in. But they don't know she's still there. And they just go inside. And I guess they don't see anyone. So they're just like, oh, we're just going to sleep here for the night. And then as they're going to sleep, this man stands up behind Gretel and just starts screaming. And it's a ridiculous scream. I'll play it here. And then he chases after them. They run out of the house. He eventually catches Hansel, because Hansel's a little fucking kid and can't run too fast. And Gretel comes back to help, and she hits him, like, in the eye. I think she knocks his eye out, but he's still, like, unfazed. And she's like, what the fuck is going on, And then he's about to attack her, but then he gets shot through the back of the head by an arrow. And it ends up being the huntsman, who, if you've read Hansel and Gretel, the story, the huntsman plays a part in that. And the huntsman's here, and he invites them back. I guess he was inside the house, too. I don't know. But he invites them in, and he makes them some food, and he makes them a bath and shit. And he tells them that he's going to send them to go and live with the foresters, where, the kid can chop trees, and she can help cook and clean. And then he does imply, or something that better benefits them. And we, once again, we know what that means. And she's like, okay, but what do you want for the stew and stuff? You must, and he's like, no, I'm good people live longer in this world than evil people is what he says. So he's just trying to help. So they leave like that night. I don't think they even spend the night, because the next time we see them, they're walking. It's nighttime. And out in the distance, silhouetted by the moonlight, they see the girl in the pink hat standing there at the tree line. And they stare at her for a little bit, but then like some ravens fly away. And when they look back, she's gone. So they're like, all right, that's wild. Next, I like this part because Gretel is narrating this whole movie. She's like, "Oh, we walked for, 500 miles or something, and we're starving and all this shit." And she's in the middle of narrating the movie, and we keep hearing like this banging sound, and we're like, "What the fuck is that?" And in the middle of her narration, she like cuts off because she gets up to go see what the fuck is happening or whatever. And it reminded me of Pesci and is a casino that he's narrating, and then the guy comes up behind him and hits him in the back with a baseball bat. And as he's like, "We were getting out of the fucking car," and and he like gets hit. But that's what it reminded me of. So I enjoyed that. The banging ends up just being like the kid fucking hitting a stick up against a tree, and he's talking about how he's practicing for the foresters, So they're starving, they're walking, everything's all distorted in the picture. They're like all dizzy and shit. And eventually they find some mushrooms on the ground. And to be fair, these mushrooms do look delicious. They're like bright red with these white dots and stuff. They just start fucking munching. They munch down on some mushrooms, and then we hard cut to them both just like sitting there giggling, looking up at the clouds and stuff. So they're tripping balls. Eventually it turns into a bad trip where Gretel sees like a bunch of the girl with the pink hat walking through the woods and shit. And they're whispering all this shit to her. I can't really pick up everything they were saying, but they're whispering into her ear. But then we fade out and we come back up and they're just all cleaned up now. So nothing really happened with the with the acid trip. They're walking some more, and eventually they find the house, and Hansel is like, "What's that smell? It smells of cake, And they go and they peek inside, and they see just this fucking buffet laid out on the ground. Or not on the ground, on like the dinner table, like a pig and fruit and vegetables and, all this shit. When Gretel looks through the window, it makes like the Illuminati, like the all-seeing eye or whatever through there. That was cool. But yeah, they see all this shit, and so not Beverly, I'm gonna fucking keep calling her Beverly. Gretel goes and is like knocking on the door, but no one's answering. So eventually, Hansel just crawls in through the window and goes and starts taking food. And Gretel is outside, and she watches as an old lady comes out from around the corner and goes to grab Hansel. And so she runs and goes and grabs a rock and tries to break in through the window, but it just like bounces off. Like it just boom, bounces right off the window. But then the lady comes out, and she's like, "Oh, you must be the sister. Come on in." And she just invites them in. And they just have this big-ass buffet in front of them. Hansel is just chowing down. He doesn't give a fuck. But Gretel is apprehensive. She's like, I don't know, But eventually she keeps eyeballing these, like, pies. And she's too hungry to resist. And so she finally starts eating these pies that are on the table. So then as Gretel and Hansel are eating, she gets up and goes and walks around. And, like, is pulling or like digging through Hansel's hair, and eventually she like pulls a little piece out, and she's like, "Oh, I'm checking for lice, before I let you guys lay your head on my pillows or whatever." And as she does this, we see that her fingers look like frostbit, like they're all blackened and shit, like they don't look like they work. And so she looks through the kid's hair, and she's like, "All right, you guys are clean enough." And so she's like, "You can stay the night here." So they go to sleep. In the middle of the night, Gretel has a dream where we see that enchantress lady who cured the girl's sickness sitting in the living room. And then she like walks up to this mirror. Gretel walks up to a mirror. And out of the mirror, we see all these little kids come walking up to her. And they're talking about, "My mother killed me. My mother ate me." Whispering all this different shit. And then she turns around and sees the girl in the pink hat standing, staring at the corner. And she goes walking over to her and puts her hand on her shoulder, and the girl's head, like, slides off. And then she wakes back up. That morning at breakfast, They tell the old lady their plan of going to live with the Foresters, but the old lady is like, well, you guys just got here. Well, stay with me for a while. And then we get a montage of her showing them how to do stuff around the house. Like, she's showing Gretel how to clean some stuff and cook. And she's showing Hansel how to, like, sharpen these axes and shit. And so they decided, they're like, sure, we'll stay with you for a little bit, So later on, they're playing a game of chess. And the old lady tells them that a storm is coming. But Hansel's like, I was outside earlier. There was no fucking storm clouds. There's no rain coming, And she's like, but I'm a woman. And I know things better than men. And I know things that I shouldn't know, And then, yeah, it just starts pouring down and shit. And that's the first time I think Gretel is like, oh, something. This lady has some type of weird power going on, So once again, that night, Gretel is going to sleep. And you don't know she's asleep yet, but she's trying to sleep, and then she looks over, and we see the girl in the pink hat next to her, and the girl in the pink hat goes running, and she runs into this basement that we just now discovered, and Gretel follows her, and we end up in this fucking, like, morgue room, where these dead kids are lying under a sheet on a table, and they start bleeding, and their blood, like, fills up the sheet and everything. And she goes to pull off the sheet, but then, of course, she wakes up, and so it's another, dream. But this dream unsettles her enough that she tells Hansel that they need to leave. She's like, we need to get the fuck out of here, But Hansel's like, well, we just, this lady feeds us. It doesn't have to be the big bad world that you think it is, The first thing she brings up, she's like, well, where is this lady getting this abundance of food and drink? We never see her leaving to go shopping and shit, So, when they're at breakfast that morning, she starts throwing out, like, little hints, where she's like, do you want me to go and shop for some produce today? I always have a good eye for a good produce, but the lady's like, oh, I don't need it, And she offers to do, like, dishes or something, and the lady's like, oh no, I got it, and she's like, something's not right here. Hansel goes out that day, and he's like chopping down these little trees. Once again, he's obsessed with like chopping down trees, and as he does that, he walks further into the woods and eventually finds a tree with a pentagram drawn on it, and he sees the enchantress lady standing off in the distance staring at him, and we keep hearing that whispering chant that we heard a little earlier over and over again as he stares at her. You guys won't have known it because I'll have edited it out, but after that last sentence I went and took a poo. It was really good. Thanks for asking. Anyway, after that scene, we go back inside, and there's this whole long conversation with Gretel and the witch. And basically it boils down to the witch is telling Gretel that she can have the same power that the witch has, and she just needs to embrace it and shit. And this is the first time that Gretel sees the witch's real where she like levitates the stick and shit. And she's like, this can be yours too. There's no need for you to be powerless or whatever. And we see Gretel start to get this tiny smile on her face. The next bit is when Gretel, she goes outside and she's like walking around, and the music playing is fucking great. It's fantastic. And Gretel gets her first sense of the power where she like reaches her hand up to this tree and makes this tree like bend down to her and shit. And she's like, oh fuck, I got this fucking telekinesis power. This is pretty sweet. That night, Hansel is scared now because of the pentagram and the shit he saw in the woods. So he wants to leave, but now she has this power thing, so she doesn't want to leave. And he's like, but we need to go, what does she want from us? And Gretel's like, fine, you want to leave? And she drags him outside, and there's this red like fog tent going on, and she just throws him down. And she's like, there you go, fucking leave, So the next morning, she's telling the witch She feels bad about sending Hansel out on his own, but the witch is telling her that he's nothing more than a burden, and she did the right thing by getting rid of him. Later that day, Gretel finally breaks through this little piece of wall that through the movie she's been like poking it and making little holes in it. And it leads down into that basement room that we saw in her dreams. And her brother's down here. He's just standing in the corner. And she goes over to him and tries to talk to him. But he's in like this trance and he can't fucking hear her. The next thing we know, this black sludge stuff starts coming out of like this pipe. And out of it forms this woman who I assumed at this point was a younger version of the witch, even though she's like super hot and covered in tattoos, but she has the same like black fingers that the witch has. So I was like, oh, is this like a younger, weird version of the witch going on here? And we watch as she goes over and picks up this bucket and pours it out onto the table, and it's a bunch of organs and you know, kidneys and shit. And then she goes over to this other bucket and pulls out a little kid arm and throws it on top and does a abracadam or whatever, you know, and does a fucking chant, and the organs turn into a whole buffet of food. So this whole time they've been eating like little kids and shit every time they eat. Gretel then wakes up. So it's like, oh man, maybe she dreamed it. But she says it doesn't matter if it was a dream or not. She knows the truth, that there's a darkness hiding behind this place. So she just has to act dumb and pretend that she doesn't know what's going on, you know. So that morning they're in the middle of having breakfast. And Gretel is just pretending that she's still interested in this power. And she's trying not to acknowledge that she knows anything is wrong. But then the lady takes a bite of her food and pulls out like this long strand of hair that has a pink bow on the end of it. And this is when she knows that Gretel knows that something's going on. She's like, listen here, you fucking bitch. I'll fucking turn your tongue into a flower and shit. So then the lady tells her that she knows that her favorite story is about the girl in the pink hat, but she tells her that she's been telling it wrong this whole time. And it turns out that the witch is the mother of the girl in the story. And she talks about how she hated her daughter, and the daughter took everything from her, including her husband and shit. So she murdered the daughter. She killed the daughter. But then the daughter stayed with her in her dreams and shit, and told her that she could have the power that she had, and she just needed to embrace it. So the woman says that she did, and she went and ate her other two kids. And she got this dark power that she has now. The lady then takes Gretel and ties her up in the basement to the table that we saw earlier with the organs on it. The brother is here. He's hypnotized, and she's going to make him walk up and sit in this cage above this fire to cook him, and she's going to make Gretel eat him. But Gretel uses her telekinetic powers to take this like spear thing sitting over in the corner and fling it into the witch and stick her above the fire, and the fire hits like her clothes, and so the witch catches on fire and she burns up, and eventually when she fully dies, like her bones collapse and shit, it frees her brother from his trance and he stops climbing the ladder. She knows that her power is too dangerous for her to be around the brother, and other people won't accept her. So she puts the brother on a horse, and I thought that she was sending him off to go to the foresters where he's supposed to be. But instead, he winds up back home. We see him walk into the kitchen and take the axe out of the table that's on the, in the kitchen or whatever. And she stays behind at the house that the witch had. And I was like, that's kind of fun. Like, this kid has nothing at that village. Like, he's just going to die there. You should have sent him off to the foresters, you know? But anyway, yeah. So then she's talking about, she has a choice whether she could go back and make, something better on top of what was destroyed, or she could just go further and be free. But then her fingers start turning black, and she looks down at them as it runs up her arms. And then that's the end of the movie. There you go. That's it. That's Gretel and Hansel. That's the whole movie. Yeah. There you go. This movie had a budget of $5 million. Made a box office of $22 million. Let's do best of, worst of. My best of is going to be the music. Honestly, that's my favorite part of the whole movie, is listening to the music in this one. It's full of synths and, just this. Yeah, it's really great. It's really good music. Worst of. I don't know. Worst of honestly might just be like the ending of the movie. Like, I don't know, it just felt kind of flat. Like, it just, yeah. I don't know. I didn't like it didn't make sense to me, her sending him back to the house where they were before. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's it. That's how I could describe most of this movie. I don't know. But there you go. That's it. That's Gretel and Hansel from 2020. What a movie. Kind of reminded me of The Witch, which I think I've seen other people draw that comparison too. I would say I like The Witch better. Even though I'm not a big fan of The Witch, I just feel like it's a better all-around movie. So if you were going to choose between The Witch or Gretel and Hansel, I'd say watch The Witch. I'd also say if you were going to choose between Gretel and Hansel or Hansel and Gretel Monster Hunters or whatever that movie was with fucking Jeremy Renner, and I can't remember who played Gretel, I would say watch the Jeremy Renner one. That one kind of kicks ass. I know a lot of people shit on it when it came out, but it's a fun movie to watch. So, go watch that movie. And besides that, I think that's it. Man, this really is. This is a short podcast for this one. Yeah. I almost want to, I don't know, the podcast is in a weird state right now where it's just me and, I'm trying to get Tyler on here to do a Pearl one, but I don't know I don't know what his plans are with this. Maybe he's just fallen out of it. He doesn't like it. Maverick's fucking on the road, driving trucks and shit. So, and he hasn't been in the podcast forever since. So it's just me. And I don't know. It's kind of weird. I kind of am thinking about rebranding the whole thing. And this isn't anything soon. Like, I'll take some time to think about it. But I almost am thinking about doing the same thing basically, but shortening it down and doing more episodes in a week. Like, not doing these fucking 45 minutes breaking down scene by scene, just doing like a review and kind of talking about points in the movie that I liked, and doing that. Also, probably I'm gonna invest in some better camera equipment, and I have a move probably coming up soon. I'm gonna be moving, so this is all stuff for the future. But, it's stuff that might end up happening. We might honestly go back, if you remember, Freak Out Theater was supposed to be the original name, but then we went with Graveyard Shit. If it ends up being that the podcast kind of burns its way out, maybe we go to Freak Out Theater and, we do like these shorter things. But we'll see. And then every now and then the podcast could pop up if someone wants to sit around and talk. But like I said, none of this is happening soon. This is all down the line. So, yeah. What else? I had something else I wanted to talk about. Shit. Okay, next week, I believe we are going to watch The Outwaters. I think it's out where you can watch it streaming somewhere. So I'm excited for that. If you remember when we did Terrifier 2, we talked about how the movie opened with talking about like this is the closest you can get to death by watching the movie, and it ended up being a preview for a different movie. It wasn't Terrifier 2. It was the Outwaters that was the preview, and this movie's come out, and all these people are talking about how scary it is. So next week will probably be the Outwaters. And sometime soon the Pearl podcast will be coming, whether Tyler's on it or not, because I want to watch it and talk about it. So look out for that one eventually. Go check out the gaming channel. A Sons of the Forest video will be out tomorrow if you're watching this on the day the podcast comes out. And I'm excited about that. We finally got around to it only took 6 years or whatever after the second game, but yeah, stuff's been popping off over there. Sons of the Forest coming out. I'm about to start playing through Sleeping Dogs, so expect a Sleeping Dogs video at some point. Yeah. I think that's about it. I don't know if any of you watched that Chris Rock special, the live Netflix. It was kind of shitty. I didn't like it very much. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, everyone tuned in to hear him talk about Will Smith, which I think the Will Smith stuff does deliver. It's good. You can tell he's like legitimately angry, but trying to like keep the jokes going. But he's even so angry that he's like he messes up like a joke and shit. But yeah, it wasn't great. Yeah, so that's a shame. I was hoping I think his last special on Netflix, I watched it, and it was pretty good. It was probably his third best special. I've never been a huge Chris Rock fan. I really like Bigger and Blacker, and God, what is the first one? The Not Afraid or whatever. Fuck, what was the name of it? Yeah, but whatever, that first special was really good too. But then the ones after that were kind of meh. Or no, Not Afraid's like the 2005 one. That one I don't like. Or is it Never Scared? I don't know. Why am I talking about Chris Rock? Hold on. We're gonna figure this out, guys. We got time. This was a short episode. Here we go. Hold on. Bring the Pain. That's it. Yeah, that one's really good. His HBO special. Never Scared is the one that's 2004. I don't like that one. Yeah. But Bring the Pain and Bigger and Blacker are really good. But the new one, not so good. Not everything he was saying, I feel like I've heard 7 other comedians say it before him. So, anyway. Alright, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, The Outwaters. I think that's the name of that movie. Outwaters. It's something like that. But yeah. So, anyway. See you guys then. Bye-bye.